Hey, how's it going? This is Sean, and I'm going to show you how to install and configure Next.js, which is server-side React. And I'm going to show you how to configure your project so that you can actually use Sass and custom CSS modules and kind of make the project your own. And we're also going to be using an Express backend. So there's a lot to get through, but the way that it starts is the way that most things start. We're going to actually build this from scratch. We're not going to use Create React App. We are going to use Next, which takes care of a lot of the heavy lifting for us, but we're going to configure our own Webpack files. We're going to use Babel RC, and I'm going to play around with a CSS utility framework, but I'll show you how to use other things like Bootstrap or Materialize if that's where your interest lies. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to CD into my project directory. I'm going to make one right now. I'm going to call it Next Tutorial, and I'm going to CD into that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a yarn in it. And I forget how to do yarn in it. I'm just going to do an npm in it. Yarn is kind of weird sometimes, but it's the best way to kind of like add stuff for React. So we're just going to do a yarn add React, React DOM, and Next. So what that is going to do, and if you don't have yarn, you can use npm and just do npm install. But what that's going to do is going to link all our dependencies and find the best, most efficient way to download these dependencies and put them right into our package JSON. So we can see that was done, and it was pretty fast. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm just going to open up Visual Studio Code so we can take a look at what we have right now. We don't really have anything. We do have our yarn lock, we have our package JSON, and our node modules folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a .git ignore, and I'm just going to go ahead and add node modules to that, and I'll be adding more to it as we go. So what I'll do is I'll open up my integrated terminal, and I'll just do git init. Alright, and right now I'll just git add all and git commit base installation. I like to keep a file of everything that I do here. So looks like VS Code doesn't want to play along. What we'll do here for Next.js, it requires that you have a pages directory. So we'll just go ahead and create that right now. Create pages, and we'll just create an index.js, which will serve as our home page. And what Next.js does is actually pretty cool. Oh, by the way, this is just ESLint. I have it running through Visual Studio Code because I'm using a module or an extension called Prettier, which is just going to help me with indentation, and I have it set up kind of the way that I want it. So I'm just going to leave it. If you see it change my code, just be aware of what that is. So anyway, Next.js. What it says, what it does is it supercharges your components. So basically, if you make just a regular React component, you don't have to import your React. You don't have to import React DOM. You do have to export React, but for right now, we'll just actually, and what I'll do is I'll change my language to JavaScript React, which will allow me to have my Emmet extensions. So I'll just create an H1, and then I'll just say hello world from Next.js. And you see how Prettier did that, where I go ahead and save, and it kind of inlines it, and it makes it as efficient as possible. Once we add more to this, it will actually know what it's supposed to do, and it won't kind of one-line it. But we'll just do an export default index, and then what we'll do is we'll come over to package.json, and I'll remove this test script here, and I'll just write a dev script. and then I'll just say next start. I believe it's next start. Let me actually double check that, but pretty sure it's next start. So right here, I'm on learnnextjs.com. It's really a great resource. I recommend it. I'll put the links in the description, and we can see here it's kind of telling us to do the same thing. All right, so it's just next. This script's here. I'm gonna take you through a little bit more than what Learn Next.js will walk you through, but just for the base easy stuff, I'm just gonna take a look at this to make sure I don't get anything wrong. So we'll just do next, and we'll come down here, and I'll just do a yarn run dev. And what this is gonna do is it's gonna take our pages directory. It's gonna supercharge them through Next.js, which has a bundler built into it, and it has all your automatic code splitting and this and that. I am going to add this .next directory to my git ignore because I find it very frustrating. Every time that I make a change, I have 17 changes to commit. So I just add that in there, and we can see that this is on localhost 3000. I'm developing on Windows, so I'm just going to go ahead and open this right now, and we see that we have this hello world from Next.js. So pretty easy to get a React install going, right? Even easier, I think, than create React app. You don't have to do any sort of ejecting. You don't have to do any crazy stuff to configure your own project like Create React App will do, where you have to eject all your scripts if you want to customize your Webpack installation. Next.js actually has some really cool features baked into it, so I'm excited to kind of walk through that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how that you can create a second page, and you can link to it automatically. So what I'll do here is I'm just going to, before I create the second page, I'm going to import link from next link, and then what I'll do here is I'll just wrap this in a div. And here we go. I'll hit save, and Prettier will take care of that for me. So I'm actually going to make these section tags. I'm going to try and be as semantic as I can with the markup. But what we have in here is we have this link component that Next.js gives to us, and we'll just do an href like you would expect, and we'll just say about, and then we'll close our link tag, or our link component, and inside this link component we'll actually create a link tag, this anchor, and really this is all you need to get started, but in here we could just put like about this project, right? I am going to do a strong focus on SEO practices for this series, and it's not going to be anything crazy. It's just it's just some optimizations that can be done, and you can learn along the way if you don't know much about SEO. So we'll just have this title in here, which is just gonna say about Next.js, which is just a little optimization that we can do. We see that it compiles successfully. So if we come here, we have this hot module reloading. So if we say instead of about this project, we say about Next.js projects, and we hit save, then we actually get the hot module reloading, which is very cool. And if you actually open your inspector and you walk into the console, you can see all these hot module reloads and exactly what it's doing, and where it's getting your polyfills or your shims or whatever. We'll head more into the console later on, but for right now, we're just going to be kind of doing a high-level overlook until we get into the more nitty-gritty stuff. So I'm going to create a new page here, and I'm just going to call this about.js. And the cool thing about this, the cool thing about Next is you don't really need to do anything. It does all the routing for you. Anything that's in this pages directory is going to have its own page. So it's a really neat feature, and it makes building a React application that can be robust very easy. So I'll just create an H1, or no, I'll do a section and then an H1, and then I'll just say about Next.js, and then I'll just create a paragraph with some lorem. And we'll just do our export default about. That way Next knows about it. And when we come here and we click this about link, it'll actually take us to our about page. And how easy was that? And then we can press back even, and we don't even need to do that crazy nonsense with location history and importing browser router and wrapping providers and stuff. Next.js just takes care of a lot of these issues with React for you. And what's really cool about it is it does it all server side. So if we created, for instance, a more React looking component, which we'll do later on, then I'll actually show you where we get these console logs that are coming on the client side, and then once the server side catches up, it'll actually stop loading on the client console and then load over here on the server terminal console, which is really cool, and it's kind of like magical how it works. So what we'll do is I'll just kill this and I'll just do a git add. Let me just get a status. Alright, so we created our pages directory, we got our git ignore. So git add all, about page added. Alright, so that's pretty much it. I'm going to show you how to add some of your own components to a Next.js installation. So we have this pages directory, which takes care of all of the pages that we want for our application. And we can see here that we're actually importing a link component that Next.js gives us, and we're using it right here. So if we actually wanted to create our own components, we could just create a components directory. And I mean, this could be anything. I'm just calling it components. And we can do everything that you would normally do. We'll create a folder, and let's call this like Navbar. And then we got our index.js, whatever. So we'll do, alright, so in your components directory, it's not considered supercharged the way that these components are. Next.js doesn't do anything with this directory. It only is concerned about the pages directory, really, at the end of the day. So what we'll do is we'll import React and component like we would in any other React installation, and then we'll just say from React. Let me close this so we have a little bit more room. And then we'll create, kind of a classy component, and we'll do class navbar extends, component, and then we'll give it a constructor with some props, and we'll just call back, and then what we'll do is we'll say this dot props equals props. And we'll create a render function, which is how React.js manages the JSX inside your return statement, which is in these parentheses here. So if you don't know much about React, we'll learn some along the way, but I definitely recommend that you take a look at the React documentation and just try to get yourself up to speed, because as we go through more of this Next.js tutorial series, you'll learn that you really want to have a good understanding of React before you move to the server-side React, because there's a couple gotchas, there's a couple ways that Next.js makes you do things, and if you have your foundation in React, it'll really help you. So what I'm just going to do right now is I'm just going to return a nav component, and what does a nav usually have? It usually has links, right? So we'll actually import our link here from next link, and then what we'll do is I'll just create a wrapper div. Oh. I gotta find a better way of letting VS Code know that I'm using React, because I really don't like the JSX extension. I think it's just weird. But I'll create my wrapper div. Come on now. Div? It's not working. Anyway. And in here, we'll create a link and close it off. And then inside, Next.js really wants you to have this this anchor tag inside. So we'll just do the same thing that we did here, and we'll just do a /about, and we'll put our title. And then we'll create another link here, and we'll do /link, and our anchor, and we'll just say we'll say API because we'll have that later on, but I don't want to focus on the back end until we're a little bit further along. So we'll just say like our API, and we'll just say href is, for right now I'm just going to put it to the home page. That way we'll just say home. That way we just know, what it is, and we don't need to worry about any broken links. So I just saved this, and we have this navbar here, and we'll just do an export default navbar. Oops. So let me just open this up a little bit further. So this is really just a really basic class here. We're not going to be using any of our props just yet, but I included this constructor just because I know that I'm going to want props later on, and it's just easier for me to build it with this classical kind of structuring. So what I'll do is I'll head back to our index page here, and instead of importing link, I'll just get rid of that, and I'll get rid of this, and I'll just say import navbar from, and then go up a directory, components, /navbar. And since we have this index.js, it's just going to read the whole directory, and it'll just pull that out automatically. And if we wanted to do some other things here where we have styles and everything, I'll show you how to do that and some cool ways to contain and structure your project. But for right now, we'll just put in our navbar, and hopefully this will work. Hopefully it does. So we'll just do our npm run dev, compile our project here, and I'll go ahead and hit save on this. Alright, it says there's no entry. Alright, there we go. So here we go. We have our home, about Next.js, and it kind of looks really ugly, but the links do work. Obviously, we don't have the navbar over here on our about page, and these are kind of ugly and hard to look at. So what Next.js allows you to do is inside your page, what you can do is you can have the style component, or not component, but you can create like all your styles and markup right here inside, and we'll just say like, alright, so for Next.js, they make you use this JSX syntax, and then you need to actually return an object which has a string interpolated. So that's kind of how Next.js does it. The CSS is probably my least favorite feature about Next.js, which is why I'm going to show you how to configure Sass. But for right now, what we'll do is we'll just style all of our anchor tags, and it's just regular CSS here. And what I don't like about it is the fact that I have to do it in this kind of like string decoration. I don't get any sort of autocomplete. Sometimes writing CSS can be, pretty boring. So Anytime you can speed it along, it's really helpful. At least that's my opinion. But we'll just go ahead and do this, and I'll actually pull this over here and I'll hit save, and hopefully it'll work. So let's see here. Alright, so that did not work, and I imagine it's because of this navbar. It's actually exported here, so let's see, what do we got? So it looks like Next.js gives us some auto prefixing right out of the bat. What I want to do is I want to try and see if maybe we can give this a nav. So that's not working. It's nested inside this other component, and I can't imagine that it will allow us to do this, but we'll see. To be honest with you, I don't really mess with styling in this JSX syntax. I just think it's awful and I hate it. But I do want to show you just to keep everything copacetic. So there we go. What we had to do is we had to put this inside of our actual nav component. So if we actually wanted to make this work, what I imagine we could do is we could just say that this would be global. And yeah, there we go. So if we put that global tag on there, then basically what that'll do is it'll allow Next.js to go down into the child components. I really don't like that. I don't like how it works. I don't like how it looks, and I think that we can do better. So what I'm going to do for the rest of this video is kind of just show you what it's like to work around with this Next.js stuff, and kind of how that we can configure it better in the next video. So I appreciate you watching, and I'll have the second video up soon. I just need to figure out how to stop this.